Of the 24 or so arguments for God that Christian philosophers marshal in the cumulative case for God, one stands above all others in how often atheists admit that it keeps them up at night.
Well, which is the best argument you've yet come up against from the other side? And I think every one of us picks the fine-tuning one as the most intriguing.
Origin of the physical constants. Now that's getting warm, getting close to a good argument.
The best argument on the basis of empirics in favor of the existence of God comes from the fine-tuning of physical parameters in our universe.
By ruling out design as an atheist, how do you answer this question?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'd say that I share the intuition that this is thorny.
Really?
Like, yeah, and it quite often gives me pause for thought.
Yes, fine-tuning. So if you're curious about what all the fuss is about, let me take you on a whirlwind tour, exploring what physicists have discovered, unveiling my favorite way to turn the fine-tuning into an argument for God, and offering some brief responses to 5 common objections atheists raise. So what is fine-tuning? Well, cosmic fine-tuning is a scientific discovery that at the deepest level, our universe is surprisingly calibrated to allow for life. The initial distribution of mass energy, the strength of gravity, the cosmological constant, even the strong nuclear force. In literature on this subject, penned by scientists of religious and irreligious stripes, physicists have identified how dozens of these fundamental building blocks of our universe, these initial conditions and laws and constants, fall to within an extremely narrow life-permitting range, as though someone has finely tuned all the dials so our universe could support life. Run computer simulations where you turn these dials in either direction, changing the numbers even just by a hair's breadth, and you get a completely sterile universe. No galaxies, no stars, no chemistry, no life. For extended rundown on these finely tuned features, check out A Fortunate Universe by my physicist friend Luke Barnes, or you can check out the entries on fine-tuning in the Blackwell Companion or Oxford Handbook of Natural Theology. Or for the pixel addicted, Reasonable Faith's animated video, linked down in the description. It does a good job of spelling out the scientific summary. Fine-tuning arguments then. They take this scientific observation of fine-tuning and they seek to make the case that somehow this is good evidence for God. Now these are a species of design arguments, or in a philosophical vernacular, teleological arguments, from the Greek telos, implying they reveal a purpose or goal. And these type of arguments, they have a long history. In the 18th century, William Paley famously put forward his watchmaker analogy, arguing that if you discovered a watch on a beach, the intricate design is just beyond nature's forces to blindly craft, and so you rightly infer an intelligent agent designed the watch. Paley then applied this same inference to certain biological features he observed, like the human eye, arguing it must be a product of intelligent design. Going back even further, the 4th century bishop Gregory of Nazianzus, he made a similar observation about how nature speaks of design, except he offered a less deistic metaphor of a lyre and its orchestrator. He writes, "No one seeing a beautifully elaborated lyre with all its harmonies, orderly arrangement, and hearing the lyre's music will fail to form a notion of its craftsman player." I love that image. In other words, whether using timekeepers or instruments, Paley and Gregory echo Psalm 19:1 and Romans 1:20 that claim how nature speaks, pointing to how certain features of creation exhibit such intricate and beautiful design, the best explanation of which is that our universe is a cosmic cathedral, designed to lead us to recognize and worship God as the cosmic craftsman. So what exactly is the fine-tuning argument? Well, perhaps the most famous version defended today comes from William Lane Craig and seeks to establish design deductively. The syllogism goes like this. Premise 1, the fine-tuning of the universe is due to either physical necessity, chance, or design. Premise 2, it is not due to physical necessity or chance, therefore conclusion, it is due to design. Now, in this version, premise 2 tends to be the controversial premise, but the current state of physics does not predict or require our finely tuned numbers. Indeed, we can imagine them being different and run computer simulations as such. So physical necessity doesn't seem like a live option. And when you consider the improbability of any one of these dials being so finely tuned, let alone dozens of them as though in a combination lock, chance just is not a reasonable explanation. With physicists trying to calculate the numbers, William Lane Craig likens the chance of cosmic fine-tuning to a blind archer randomly launching an arrow into space and hitting a small bullseye on a target thousands of kilometers away. The agnostic physicist Paul Davies likens the fine-tuning of just the strong nuclear force to the chance of a blindfolded person randomly choosing a single special marked coin out of a billion stacks of coins, when each stack covers a North American-sized continent and stretches up to the moon. And the staunchly skeptical physicist Fred Hoyle says that the fine-tuning of the universe is as likely as a group of monkeys composing Shakespeare's Hamlet by randomly banging away on typewriters. Hoyle concludes, a common-sense interpretation of these facts suggests that a super intellect has monkeyed with the physics. Talk about a stunning confession from an atheist. So it seems Craig's version of the argument, it certainly is defensible. Personally, though, following conversations with physicist friends like Luke Barnes, my favorite versions of the fine-tuning argument tend to be a little bit more humble in their conclusions, framed abductively rather than deductively, coming up with theism as the inference to the best explanation. Something like premise 1, the universe appears fine-tuned for life. Premise 2, the best explanation of fine-tuning is theism. Therefore, conclusion, fine-tuning provides some evidential support for theism. Here the goal is simply to show that theism is the best explanation of the facts of fine-tuning, moving the evidential needle just towards God's existence a bit more. So let's look at 5 common skeptical objections to the fine-tuning argument. Objection number 1, God of the gaps reasoning. Some atheists have responded to fine-tuning by claiming this is naive God of the gaps reasoning, just another example of appealing to God to cover over scientific ignorance. Richard Dawkins and Neil deGrasse Tyson, for instance, argue that the apparent design in nature that led to Gregory's lyre or Paley's watch, like the intricacy of the human eye, that has since been explained away by naturalistic mechanisms, such as those that drive Darwinian evolution. So we don't need God anymore, we just need more science, and in the end, any appearance of design will ultimately disappear, including from fine-tuning. But this objection runs the risk of affirming a naturalism of the gaps, where in the face of a good argument for design, against all the present odds of available evidence, atheists confidently affirm science will one day vindicate a naturalistic explanation of reality. And while it is true that some Christians perhaps have been too hasty to appeal to design, with later discoveries of naturalistic mechanisms calling the God hypothesis into question, the fascinating thing about fine-tuning is that the deeper we have dug scientifically into the origins of our universe, that is where the evidence of design screams loudest. I love the quote by Werner Heisenberg, the Nobel Prize winner and father of quantum mechanics, who said, "The first gulp from the glass of the natural sciences will turn you into an atheist, but at the bottom of the glass, God is waiting for you." And cosmic fine-tuning is not a surface-level observation. It's at the very bottom of the glass of our universe. And no appeal to cosmic, chemical, or even biological evolution has any bearing on the fine-tuning of these numbers. And so there is no appeal to scientific ignorance. It is because of our deep scientific knowledge of fine-tuning, along with an absence of reasonable naturalistic alternatives, that renders the inference to theism a rational step. Objection number 2, the hostile universe objection. Another common objection is that the universe is almost entirely inhospitable to life. The vacuum of space, extreme temperatures, dead planets, black holes. Fermi's paradox shows just how poorly this universe is fine-tuned for life because we can't see it anywhere else. So if fine-tuning for life was God's goal, then this hostile universe is not exactly what we would expect to find. But this objection simply dodges the point, comparing the hostile conditions of the universe negatively against the hospitable conditions of life here on Earth. But fine-tuning, however, does not predict that the universe should be crammed with living beings from end to end and from start to finish, nor does Christian theism. No, the fine-tuning argument simply tries to offer an explanation as to why, despite the odds, life is possible anywhere in our universe. And as it turns out, upon further investigation, nothing in our universe seems wasted. Smaller, denser universes, they tend not to last long, so we need a huge universe for life. And we need the cold vacuum of space to enable scientific discovery. If there was atmosphere everywhere, breathable air for instance, filling our solar system, our sun's warmth would dissipate too rapidly, and worse, we wouldn't be able to observe anything beyond. No stars, no galaxies, no scientific answers to the questions of our origins. So not only is our universe fine-tuned for life, it's also fine-tuned for the discoverability of these facts, as though someone wanted us to be capable of unlocking the secrets of fine-tuning woven into the fabric of creation. Objection 3, superfluous fine-tuning. As some critics have questioned why God would even need to fine-tune the universe for life, given he could easily create and sustain life here on Earth in a sort of supernatural bubble, miraculously protecting us from the hostile or chaotic parameters beyond. But apart from how God's supervening on nature might undermine his revelatory purposes, which you can explore further in my videos on divine hiddenness, perhaps the bigger problem with this skeptical suggestion is that it blows up science entirely. This is precisely why modern science didn't grow out of ancient worldviews, where nature's forces were in constant flux, controlled by the whims of capricious gods. Because without order in the universe, there'd be no physical laws to be discovered, and no regularity for us to harness for human enterprise and technological advancement. That's why the Christian story of a rational God ordering his creation in Genesis was fertile soil for the scientific revolution. And since God's goal in the Christian story is human development as stewards of creation, for us to grow in spiritual, intellectual, and moral maturity, I think a finely tuned universe is predicted on Christian theism, nullifying this objection. But again, don't miss how critics here dodge the central challenge of fine-tuning. They offer no naturalistic alternative to the design hypothesis. Objection number 4, the multiverse objection. This is the big one, and the only really serious game in town for refuting the fine-tuning argument. Here critics say Christians they're too hasty in dismissing chance as a reasonable explanation. As fine-tuning, it's only extremely improbable if you only have a single universe. But what if there is an infinite number of universes, each with those fundamental dials randomized? Surely with so many rolls at the cosmic dice, then eventually you will get a life-permitting universe. So couple the existence of the multiverse together with the anthropic principle, and of course we observe a finely tuned universe, as only a finely tuned universe would produce observers like us in the first place. So if a multiverse is possible, some would even say plausible given some current physical theories, chance it is a viable explanation of the cosmic fine-tuning we see. Now, what I love about this multiverse proposal is that, as a philosophical objection to the fine-tuning argument, it is such a strong tip of the hat to the powerful scientific evidence of design. Basically, you need to appeal to an infinite number of unknown worlds to get around the improbability of the one known world we do have being so finely tuned. But let me spell out a few major problems with this objection. First, for the nerds amongst us, check out a brilliant rejoinder to the multiverse objection developed by Roger Penrose of Oxford in his 2004 book The Road to Reality. Now warning, this is a technical thought experiment about what kinds of universes and observers would be more likely if we are simply the product of the multiverse. But if you want to get the gist of the argument, go ahead and Google Boltzmann brains. You're welcome. A simpler problem with the multiverse objection is that it seems to run afoul of Occam's razor, which favors explanations with fewer entities and less ad hoc propositions. The argument here would be that the multiverse objection unnecessarily posits an infinite number of entities in order to explain our universe, rather than simply appealing to a single creator. A more serious nail in the coffin of the multiverse objection is that physicists who are experts in fine-tuning, like Luke Barnes and Roger Penrose and Paul Davies, they've pointed out that all our viable models of a multiverse actually require a multiverse generator that is extraordinarily fine-tuned itself. The net result would be that even if this objection is successful, it fails, only kicking the fine-tuning problem back a step. But my major beef with the multiverse objection is that without any solid evidence, and with no possible future access to evidence either, it explains away the good evidence we do have of design right now in what amounts to be a philosophical sleight of hand. For an analogy, imagine you and me were playing a high-stakes game of poker, where after dealing out 10 hands, I just happen to get a royal flush every time as the dealer. Obviously, I clear you out of all your chips and you've lost your life savings. Now, what would you rationally conclude? Did I just get lucky, or am I cheating? Now suppose you were about to shoot me for dishonest dealing, but I tell you that, hey, this really did just happen by chance, and that the improbability of this crazy event can be overcome simply by the fact that there is an infinite number of universes in which you and I have played this exact same high-stakes game, and we've played it an infinite number of times. And you happen to just exist in the unlucky reality where I do randomly get 10 royal flushes. Now that may be a possible explanation, but will you believe it? Hell no, because there's no reasonable evidence to support that conclusion. You have no access to these other universes. You can't see if we've played an infinite number of games, and you can't rule out that I'm not cheating in every single one of them. All you have is access to this game. So given the odds, the best explanation is that someone has fixed the cards. and you would no doubt act accordingly by either pulling the trigger or calling the police. See the analogy to fine-tuning? We're given all the hallmarks of design in this one universe we can observe, and the only universe we can ever observe. The multiverse objection just reeks of motivated reasoning, a sleight of hand to avoid the implications of the most reasonable conclusion. Now, there are other objections worth considering, like if our universe is designed, who designed the designer? So check out our video on who created God. Or you can explore Nick Bostrom's observations around selection bias, which I think Richard Swinburne has soundly answered with his firing squad analogy. But let me close with one final, maybe more personal objection. Objection number 5, the complexity objection. Now, more popular level critics, like the atheist YouTuber Alex O'Connor you saw at the beginning, they've argued that the fine-tuning argument is simply too complex to serve God's purposes in Revelation. I mean, it depends upon a super recent discovery that billions of people never had access to across history. And it requires a working familiarity with physics and probability that rules out the kinds of people who never clicked on this video in the first place, or the ones who clicked away because they got bored. Surely such a technical argument is a weird way for God to reveal himself if he wants a personal relationship with us, right? I mean, it doesn't exactly move the heartstrings or incline you towards worship. So let me close with 2 responses I hope will help. First, given the degree to which atheists have clung to science as a tool to dispel belief in God, it seems entirely appropriate to me that in his foreknowledge and providence, as an act of grace and a serious challenge, God would disrupt this skeptical strategy by opting for fine-tuning to be discovered now at the very bottom of the scientific glass. Atheists demand strong evidence of design. Well, God says, here you go. And like Jesus said to the Apostle Thomas after presenting him with the evidence of his scars, now the challenge is set to you to stop doubting and believe. And second, on a deeper level, you don't have to be a science whiz to experience how nature speaks. See, the fine-tuning argument, it might not be your cup of tea, but it's just one technical and scientifically articulated species of a more intuitive step. To observe order and beauty in nature, in the stars of the night sky, or a butterfly's dance, or a spider's web, and allow it to inspire awe that leads you to worship God as the craftsman of this cosmic cathedral. And that's a step we can all take personally in response to nature's design. Hey, I'm Dan Patterson, and I hope you found this intro video on fine-tuning helpful. At Questioning Christianity, I have hundreds of videos helping you connect the Christian story to life's deepest questions. So if you love what we do here, go ahead and subscribe and share with others, then follow us over on our social media channels for more infographics, and feel free to suggest content through our website at questioningchristianity.com.